We don't know. But capital gains is a huge thing. The budget increases capital gains on individuals and corporations. That's not good, and it kills innovation and anybody wanting to build a business in Canada. Why would you build a business in Canada when you could build a business anywhere else? And so not have to hand it all over to the government after you're gone or want to transfer it, right? After you build a business and you want to sell it, they want you to give 66% to the government. No. If you've made over $250,000, no, thank you very much. Paying for housing for foreigners, yeah, that's in the budget. Debt service has increased by 120% to $54 billion from $30 billion, but I've got a $20 billion number as well. Remember when Chrystia Freeland said it was irresponsible not to borrow because borrowing was so cheap? It's so cheap, just take on a whole bunch of debt. Yay, that's such a good idea. You're not an economist, are you, Chrystia Freeland? You're a reporter. Coots 3. We're going to start with the Coots 3. They were found guilty. This is the three gentlemen who were charged with mischief for organizing the Coots blockade, and so they were charged with mischief, and they've been found guilty. Mischief carries up to 10 years in prison. So, I mean, very, very interesting times. I think the judiciary has failed us in Canada, and that's not great. We're going to start with the law and order stuff, and then we're going to move into budget very quickly, I think. But quick show note, I'm going to be gone from the 25th of... on the 25th, I'll be gone. I won't be doing a show on the 25th, and then until May 5th or 6th, depending on when I get home. So I have a thing I have to do, and it's going to happen. So I thought I'd let you guys know. Sorry about that, and I'll do shows as I can, but I'm not worried about my time because I can usually eke out some time to put together a show and talk about things. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the ability to upload. I'm not sure I'll be able to upload. So we'll see. If I can upload, then I'll do shows during that time period. But I'm going to be driving for a couple of days. So it is what it is. Sorry, everyone. These things happen and life happens. So that's what's happening. So it's going to be super, super great. But I had to let you all know. Lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we have to start with law and order and the Coots situation. And here's Mocha bringing us on the ground reporting from in front of the courthouse in Alberta. He says, quote, "I was there standing up to tyranny," says former Fort Macleod town councillor Marco H., who is among the 3 protesters facing the judge in Lethbridge, Alberta today. Although the COVID mandates ended, the prosecution of those who protested against it continues. Charged with mischief over $5,000, the 3 men accused of being the organizers of the Coots border blockade. I asked him if he thinks the prosecutions are politically motivated. 100%, he said. The current administration would not be where they are if it wasn't for the Coots blockade. There are those individuals involved in the previous provincial administration that once a verdict has been reached that Jason Kenney, former premier, had to resign, I believe they took the extraordinary steps to execute some justice on their own, he responded. Follow and support Mocha for more on this whole story, but here's CTV News talking about it as well. Trio found guilty of mischief for roles in 2022 border blockade at Coots, Alberta. And here's just a part of that article. 3 men accused by the Crown of helping lead and coordinate the COVID-19 protest blockade at Coots, Alberta in 2022 have been found guilty of mischief. Jurors deliberated for 3 hours Tuesday night before finding Alex Van Herk, Marco Van H., and Gerard George Jansen guilty of 1 count each of mischief over $5,000. Gasps of surprise were heard in the courtroom, packed with supporters of the trio when the verdict was announced. The 3 were on trial in Court of King's Bench for their roles in a blockade that tied up cross-border traffic between Canada and the United States at Coots for 2 weeks in early 22 in protest of COVID-19 rules and restrictions. Court of King's Bench Justice Keith Y. warned the packed courtroom before the 6-man, 6-woman jury came back with their verdict. While this court understands the vested interest of those who assembled, this court will not allow those interests to interfere with the jury rendering its verdict without interruption or interjection. Said anyone who could not abide by or agree with that rule should now leave the courtroom. The 3 men were comforted by about 36 people outside the court. Van Ubrose and Jansen embraced. Let's hope they put us in the same spot, one said. Van Herk said he was initially optimistic due to the short time they deliberated. It was quite shocking, right? It's like, wow, you get that in the pit of your stomach, but you know what? I have no answer to that. The jury decided and I'll accept it, he said. He said he's proud of participating in Coots and holding politicians accountable. If that's what it takes, and that we can show politicians what's right, and we'll do whatever sentence it is, I'd do it again tomorrow. The maximum sentence for public mischief for over 5,000 is 10 years in prison. Van H said he wasn't surprised by the jury's verdict. Honestly, there's no surprise here for me. Based on the charge, based on the interpretation of the law, we're guilty, he told reporters. It was much more than just 18 days on a highway in the middle of nowhere. We shook and threatened the pinnacle of power in this province. Coots was the flame that the grassroots rallied around and turned it into a fire. Neither Van H. or Van Herk intend to appeal their convictions. Jail time is a concern for Van H. I'm human. I worry more about how it'll affect my kids, my wife. It'll affect me less. They're the ones that will have to deal with this. A pre-sentence report has been ordered for all three men. The case is scheduled to appear again July 22nd before a sentencing hearing can be scheduled. Earlier Tuesday, in closing arguments to the jury, Crown Prosecutor Stephen Johnson said jurors only need to find the three were active participants in the blockade to return a guilty verdict. So, right. The right to protest does not let you lay siege to property for 2 weeks. It was not their highway to close, Johnson told the jury. One act, one statement of encouragement can be enough to convict. Crown does not have to prove these men were the leaders. So it's interesting because going after mischief is not like leading mischief or anything to that effect. It's very, very interesting. Here is protesters in Ontario who were blockading railroads, and the police pushed them off. Karmaya says, protesters have shut down railway tracks at Dundas and DuPont to demand an immediate arms embargo against Israel. They chant at police, go get a real job. And so the police then cleared this off the tracks. But will any of these people be charged with mischief, right? Like any of these people blocking railroad tracks?
That is not a job.
So when you have laws that are some people are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law and other people aren't, then the laws don't really exist. It's not really a legal standard. It's a legal standard for me, but not them, right? Or the Coots guys, but not them. Really strange. And also not what's intended by rule of law. Here's this just didn't fit anywhere else, so I thought I'd include it here. Here's footage of an armed home invasion in Markham. 2 suspects charged. So, I mean, can you wear a sidearm? Is that okay? Right? I'm just in my house, officer. I just have a sidearm just in case I walk in and find somebody in my kitchen. Right? So they come in. One's got an AR-15. I don't know why the bleeps and bloops. AR-15 and the other guy's got a handgun. I would not, and I know, like I'm not really a gun guy. Although I'm pro-gun, I think I would classify myself as somebody who is pro-gun. I like the idea of being able to protect yourself because police are a long way away. It takes a long time. But I would not if I had a gun. I always thought this when I was watching like detective shows as well. If you see the thug put the gun in his belt and like the business end of the gun is in a very unfortunate spot if it accidentally goes off, right? Like I'm thinking of it would just be very, very terrible. What happened to you? Well, I shot off right? Because I was storing it and I didn't realize the safety wasn't on and I just hit the trigger and right? Like, oof. It just doesn't, why? Okay, moving on. We got to talk about the budget. We have to talk about the budget. I'm sorry, it's 10 minutes in, but that's actually better than I thought. I thought I can't talk about 20 minutes. I can't talk about this for 20 minutes. We have to get to the budget. It's so much. The budget is huge. It's crazy. Here's Chrystia Freeland buying new shoes. And remember, somebody says, I think it's this tweet. Yes, Jennifer says, remember when Jim Flaherty resold his old shoes to show fiscal prudence? Times have changed for sure. So Chrystia Freeland has a whole bunch of different colored shoes. There's blue shoes, there's black shoes, there's red shoes, there's white shoes, and there are fawning reporters and everybody's having a great old time taking pictures of the finance minister buying new shoes because that's tradition. And so she bought the shoes and then they come in. The makeup here seems overdone. And what is Marcy Ian wearing? Can you guys see this? She's got some kind of muumuu on. I think I'm being kind with that description. And the shoes are like Adidas high tops. I can't explain this. She showed up and she kind of looked around and everybody looked around in their suits and said, it's okay, just go with it.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Could you describe this year's budget, please? Dans le dilan, s'il vous plaît.
This budget is about fairness for every generation.
Chrystia Freeland looks like she's going to the prom. Where's the corsage, Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister? So yeah, everybody else is much more dressed up than Marcy Ian. Marcy Ian is the odd one out. Like she's like, we weren't doing the Hawaiian Adidas thing. Jeepers creepers. The fairness for everyone is such nonsense as well. Fairness for everyone, as illustrated by the last judicial incompetence, well, they're throwing the book at some people and allowing other people to run the streets of Toronto for no good reason, right? Fairness for everybody. Give me a break, Prime Minister. Ryan says, Freeland starts the budget speech with, "We're making life cost less." Nope. Note the laughs after she says that. We'll just listen for a minute. Maybe, the whole clip here is a minute 13. I don't intend to listen to Chrystia Freeland a whole lot. She sniffs the microphone too much. Here we go.
We are moving with purpose to help build more homes faster. We are making life cost less. We're driving the kind of economic growth that will ensure every generation of Canadians can reach their full potential.
Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. That's enough, Chrystia Freeland, for me. Here is Andy Lee. She says, we're screwed. Here is what she's highlighting in the planned borrowing activities for 2024-25. The aggregate principal amount of money to be borrowed by the government in 24-25 is projected to be $508 billion, 83% of which will be used to refinance maturing debt at the higher rate, right? Central banks where we have to pay interest doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't help a country very much. I think eventually it just eats up all of your money, right? Especially with the collapse of the buying power of the fiat currency. The debt's going to, we can't spend enough because the debt servicing is going to eat up all of that. So we're kind of snookered, which I've been saying before. Holly Doan says Budget 24 proposes billions in new spending at rates up to 95% higher than forecast a year ago. Federal spending this year, $498 billion. Debt interest charges, $54.1 billion, double the rate of $24.5 billion in 2021. So it's very costly. We borrowing money, right? And the whole strategy of Chrystia Freeland a couple of years ago was it's irresponsible to not borrow money when borrowing money is this cheap. So what do you do when the interest rates rise? Mr. Polyev, that question is not appropriate because the interest rates are low, right? But eventually they're going to rise. Not according to finance minister and reporter Chrystia Freeland. CBC Watcher says debt interest costs will reach the sum of $54 billion in the financial year 24-25, up by almost $30 billion or almost 120%. Let's agree that this is an expensive interest bill that amounts to wasting money. This is Le Journal de Montréal. So that's their take on it. Here's Pierre Poilievre. He's making political hay out of this. Trudeau will spend more on interest costs than on healthcare, more money for bankers than for nurses. He's not worth the cost. No, he's not. But we all knew that. Maxime Bernier weighs in as well. He says Freeland will table another budget written in red ink today. It won't balance itself. Even after the orgy of spending during COVID, the Liberals keep creating new programs that we can't afford. The cost of servicing the debt is exploding. They're bankrupting Canada. I think it was a glory hole of spending during COVID. Come on, Mr. Bernier. Cat Canada says, Chrystia Freeland, with a straight face, said, we continue to stick to a responsible fiscal plan. I mean, okay, we'll watch just this as well. It's funny because she's saying plain old lies. She's just lying to everybody. Here's Chrystia Freeland saying things that aren't true in the House of Commons. Here we go.
As we invest with purpose for the benefit of our younger generations and those who love them, we continue to stick to a responsible fiscal plan. As part of that plan, in the fall, we set 3 very specific fiscal guideposts. As we
Right. They're not following a responsible fiscal plan. They're not. Andrew Scheer says this is just one way that you pay for Trudeau's deficits. More of your tax dollars go to pay the interest on his debt. More than healthcare, you pay higher prices and higher interest rates, and now you have to pay higher taxes to service the debt. This has to stop. So Andrew Scheer is getting in on this whole thing as well. Global News says Budget 24 by the numbers. Here's how spending is being divvied up. $535 billion is the total government spending for 24-25 fiscal year, $39.8 billion, the total deficit, just shy of the $40 billion projection in the fall economic statement, $11.5 billion, the amount of new spending this year, $8.5 billion on that's what's being spent to spur on new housing. We've talked a lot about housing. The only way to fix the housing issue is to reduce immigration. The only people who can do that are the federal government. they're talking about reducing immigration, and we'll talk about that in the housing series of tabs. They say they're going to reduce it by 600,000. But that, I don't think that's nearly enough, especially if you look at all of the temporary foreign workers, the students, and the just direct immigrants who are here on PR cards or something to that effect. All of those was more than 1 million, I think even more than 1.5 million. If we take 600,000 away, we're still importing 900,000 people a year. Way too many, way too many. So I'm just making sure everybody's on the same page and understands that throwing money at housing is not going to fix this. It's not possible to fix this. If you have a team of people who can build 5 houses a day, let's just say, telling them to build 20 houses a day isn't going to work. Telling them to build 10 houses a day isn't going to work. You're not going to get good workmanship in those 10 houses if they can make it, if they can manage it, which they probably can't, right? So and that's what they're asking our labor to do, and it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And also making the 10 houses out of the 5, also if it could just cost the same as the 5 houses, that'd be great, right? Like they don't want to actually spend any money on materials, and they've made the materials cost more because of the carbon tax, right? And so what they're asking is impossible, and they damn well know it. 3.87 million, the number of new homes the government says its housing plan will get built by 2031. That's faulty. That's fiction. 2.6 billion, what the Liberals say will go towards generational fairness to erase education costs and create new job opportunities for younger Canadians. This seems like a communist tenet. There were a lot of people saying this whole generational fairness language is very, very communist, distributing wealth across the generations, taking from the older generation who have it all locked up and distributing across younger generations through the government, right? Think the carbon tax, but for your wealth. And they're doing that. They're definitely trying to do that. 19.4 billion, the amount of revenue Ottawa expects to get from 5 years of targeted changes to capital gains taxes. 1.5 billion, the 5-year cost of universal coverage of contraceptives and diabetes medicine and supplies over the next 5 years. I would love to look into this a little bit more. I feel like needles and insulin are not part of it, and the new experimental medication that is banned in Europe is the only thing that they're covering. But I could be wrong. If they're covering needles and traditional diabetic treatments, then that's interesting. But still, I fear that's not what's going on. 1.7 billion, what Ottawa thinks it will get in 5 years from an increase to the excise tax rates for tobacco products. 8.1 billion, the boost to Canada's defense budget over the next 5 years. 1.76, the percentage of GDP that defense spending will account for by 2030, still shy of the 2% NATO target. Yeah, we're definitely going to pay a rent sometime soon, guys. Not between now and 2030, but soon. 50, the number of times the word fairness appears in the budget document. Fairness. These Liberals are anything but fair. This is probably the most impactful or most important part of the budget, and it is the most crushing. And here it is. GM Forbes says this measure in today's budget increases the capital gains from 27% to 36%. The US is 20%. Bye-bye Canadian businesses, right? To make Canada's system more fair, the inclusion rate, the portion of capital gains on which tax is paid for capital gains for individuals with more than $250,000 in capital gains in a year, will increase from 1/2 to 2/3. Individuals will continue to only pay on 50% of any capital gains up to $250,000 per year. The inclusion rate will also increase 2/3 for all capital gains realized by corporations and trusts. The new rules will apply to capital gains realized on or after June 25th, 2024. So you have from now until then to sell your business or whatever under the old rules. Here's Nana, and she's adding some color as to why this is bad and impacts Canada in a negative way over the short and long term. She says, so now in Canada, it will no longer be advisable to own anything. Just discourages all investments. Why invest in a business and work your ass off to then, when you sell, to have to give the government taxes on 66.7% of your gains? It's ludicrous. People will just stop investing. They put in all the money, they pay all the bills, they take all the risk, and the government just then takes a very large piece of it. Also, now, when you die, your family will pay taxes on 66.7% of the sale to the government, just because your family invested, paid for, and maintained that said property. So why own? If you have RRSPs, your family will pay 66.7% tax. If people of Canada, citizens, the time is now. We need to say no. Yeah, it is killer. It's killer what they're doing. Here's the Sorry Not Sorry says GDP per capita in Canada is tanking. We need to manufacture and sell things. Increasing taxes is the first step to destroying that. Why do our liberals not understand that? Oh, they understand it. They're trying to destroy it. That's what they're trying to do. Holy smoke. Anthony Koch says, it's always F the corporations until the taxes they pay and the jobs they create go away. Never forget that people and corporations who have means, both financial and the ability, have options, and they can and will leave. And yeah, Shopify and Canadian, president and CEO of Shopify, and these both of these guys are Shopify guys. So these guys would be part of the small group of Canadians. Justin says the increase only applies if you have more than $250,000 of gains in 1 year. This affects 0.13% of all Canadians, so not even a percent. I'm not a fan of their policies either, but there are bigger problems to worry about. But not really. Like Shopify is proudly Canadian and blah, 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 and they're a tech industry. They're an anchor in Waterloo. If Shopify moves, and why wouldn't they move? Like if I owned Shopify, I'd be going to Texas. I'd be like, I'm out. See you later. Peace. Because what? Right? Because no. Because the inclusion rate down in the States is 20%, I believe. So here is president or CEO, I'm not sure. He says, what are we doing, Canada? And Armand says, bad day for entrepreneurship in Canada. Capital gains tax rate is increasing from 50% to 66%. This increases the net capital gains from 27% to 36%, compared to the US, which has a 20% capital gains tax rate and major incentives like QSBS. This is bad, right? And he says, message from a friend, Canada has heard rumors about innovation and is determined to leave no stone unturned in deterring it. So we are going to destroy innovation in Canada if we possibly can. Rajan says, today is a sad day for entrepreneurs in Canada, but more so a sad day for Canada in general. Innovation will inherently slow down with increased taxes. Choosing Canada to build new companies is no longer an option. It's a gut punch to all those like me who moved home to build. While the government said the capital gains increase only affects 40,000 Canadians, what about the future impact of companies that will never be built here by new immigrants and the new jobs that will not be created? And the impact of that Canada will miss in the world. What about those? The entrepreneur tax relief cap of $2 million is a complete mess. It doesn't become effective fully for 10 years, requires a 5-year hold, which is completely arbitrary, and more so, screams that we shouldn't incentivize those that really hit it out of the park. Well done. Yeah. So if your business becomes viable in the short term, then, well, you've got to wait 5 years. Wild stuff. Absolutely crazy. Steve is sharing this Globe and Mail article. Liberal government to raise capital gains taxes on individuals and corporations, a productive way to drive more capital out of the country, right? So you punish the people with the most means to leave, and those people will leave to spite you because, yes, they would. Yes. Frank, I would do everything I can to remove money out of the systems that these people control, because they're absolutely doing everything they can to destroy all of the infrastructure and institutions and things that I grew up relying on to keep me and my family safe. So, yep, people would leave if they can leave. Franco says Ottawa's cost to borrow has spiked from 20.3 billion in 21 to 54.1 billion in 24-25. That means Ottawa will spend more to service its debt than it will on healthcare this year, and the debt charges will march even higher in the years ahead. Yep, absolutely. Here's Paul, and he says budget 24, an additional 1.1 billion for housing assistance programs for asylum claimants, illegals. Canadians pay for their housing, but asylum claimants apparently have a higher status than citizens in the eyes of the Trudeau Liberals. So Budget 24 proposes 1.1 billion over 3 years, starting in 24-25, to Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada to extend the interim housing assistance program. Funding in 26-27 will be conditional on provincial and municipal investments in permanent transitional housing solutions for asylum claimants. So making it permanent and downloading to the cities and provinces. Crazy stuff. The budget mentions 600,000 person reduction in permanent residency 3 times. Here's one. The government has also recently announced that it will reduce the share of temporary residents to 5% of the overall population over the next 3 years. This will lead to approximately 600,000 fewer temporary residents in Canada compared to current levels. Normalizing permanent and temporary immigration levels is critical to ensuring the newcomers have opportunities and social supports they need to succeed when coming to Canada. we should just stop with the whole multiculturalism thing. Nope. We're all done with that. Finished. Done. Finito. We're going to just continue being the country that we are, wanting to be, and we're going to stop importing people. Liberals splurge $10 million on social media COVID-19 vaccine campaigns. Canada's health agency spent nearly $10 million on efforts to persuade the public to receive the novel mRNA COVID-19 injections through strategic messaging and promotion. Rebel News has learned that the Canadian government's allocated nearly $10 million to promote safe and effective COVID-19 injections on social media beginning in 2020. What kind of, if I took out an article, if I, say I sold something, let's say I made a new version of Coke, right? New Coke, Mark Coke or whatever, and I wanted to sell that stuff. And then I took out an ad campaign and I said, it's safe and effective. And, I make these claims like it cures the common cold or something like that. And I say, it's 100% safe and effective. You definitely won't die, blah, 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 blah. And I put it on the shelves and I spent like $10 million marketing this product. And then we find out that Mark Coke's really terrible for you and it creates myocarditis and blood clots or something crazy like that, right? Just unbelievably bad for you. Unbelievably bad, really, really bad. Wouldn't I have some kind of accountability for that? Wouldn't somebody come to me and be like, hello, can we speak to Mark? And then I answer the door and then they put shackles on me for friggin' lying to everybody about this product that I created and put on the market and told everybody it was safe and effective when it wasn't? Wouldn't you expect that? That's what I saw on all the TV shows when I was a kid. Littlest Hobo, come on, right? At the end of it, Jessica or Matlock or somebody explains what happens. Everybody goes, oh, and then the bad guy gets put in prison. No, that's not what happens. So it just seems strange. So they spent $10 million doing that. Probably much more than that. I know the provincial government spend a ton of money as well on advertising that kind of stuff. We should probably stop that practice. If I had my druthers, if I had control of a government, then I would definitely stop that practice. I would say it's absolutely not okay for anybody to use government funds to lie to people or do advertising campaigns. I feel like you should have a website, and if people are interested in it, nobody tells me I have to go to X. Nobody tells me I have to go to YouTube or Rumble or any of those other websites. Nobody says you are mandated to do this. But it seems like these governments are just fine with spending a lot of money to drive traffic to their stuff that they want you to know about, right? And it's all our money. And I think that we could probably, I could find out about it, right? If I know that the government's website will take me to all of the things I need to know about the government, well, then I'll check it out when I'm ready, right? I don't think the government needs to advertise so much about everything, especially when they're wrong and lying about it. No is highlighting this for the Epoch Times. Feds spent an estimated $10.6 billion on COVID vaccines, destroyed 74 million doses worth $2.1 billion. So on one side, they're spending a lot of money on advertising. And on the other side, they're spending a lot of money on the actual product itself. And they had to destroy billions of dollars because there's no demand. Nobody wants it because it's crap product, right? Nobody wants it. It's expired. So we're still spending money. But the funny thing is, tax dollars that get spent it's like a mortgage, right? We talked about this yesterday because of the taxes in municipalities, but if you get a mortgage, that money didn't exist and now it does exist, and you're going to pay it back over the years that you have that mortgage, that the bank and you have that agreement. So the money exists now because the bank created it and loaned it to you, but it didn't exist before, right? Poof. And so there's an incentive for that creation to happen, right? And that's kind of happening in the advertising industry and in the COVID vaccines. The taxes that are being given to the government are being given then billions of dollars to Pfizer or whoever to buy these products, and poof, right? It's just like buying a mortgage. The taxes are poof, made real, right? Manifest in Pfizer. Now with taxes, I guess they'd be manifest somewhere else, but if they weren't spent on Pfizer. But it just seems like they're very, very effective at getting money, and then nobody wants the damn product. It's billions of dollars in waste. Crazy. No again says Budget 24 on the gun buyback program. Firearms will be taken from law-abiding citizens to ensure they never fall into the hands of criminals, like the government. But we found out on March 25th that Ottawa has already spent $42 million on a liberal gun buyback program that doesn't exist. So they're budgeting another million, 7.4 million over 5 years, 30 million over 2 years, starting in 24-25 to Public Safety Canada for the buyback of assault-style firearms sourced from existing departmental resources. Sure. Waste. Tons of waste. And I don't think they're going to have the success that they think they're going to have. A lot of people aren't willing to, like, a buyback implies that it's for sale. What if it's not for sale? Like, this gun belongs to me and I bought it legally and it's not for sale. Not to you, not to anybody. So sorry about your luck. Amazing Zoltan highlights this. Conservative MP Stephanie Ellis exposes the Liberals' dental care program as a total scam, revealing that the number of dentists who signed up for the program is in the single digits. It's 4 dentists, I think. 8 dentists across 3 provinces. Amazing Zoltan says, this is remarkable. The starting cost of the Canadian dental care program is $4.4 billion per year, and they've only managed to sign up 8 dentists across 3 provinces. That's a cost of $550 million per dentist. It's a lot of money. And the funny thing is, I've read a whole bunch of people responding to this, and basically the amount of money the government wants to pay isn't enough to cover the treatments they want to pay for, and so nobody signs up for them because they can't make money. They can't afford the help, right? Like, in order to give a product, like if your product costs $5 to produce and put in the stores, you can't sell it for $4 because for every product you're losing $1, right? That's not how business works, right? But that's kind of how they're trying to make this dental thing work. It's not going to work, right? Cat Canada says, here's a couple more highlights from Chrystia Freeland's Crazy Town. Cat Canada says, Freeland, do you want to live in a country where we choose to pass a ballooning debt onto our children? And you can hear the Conservatives say, that is happening. You are doing, that's what's going on, Chrystia Freeland. You're doing that right now. Here we go.
We want to live in a country where we make the investments we need in healthcare, in housing, in old age pensions, but we lack the political will to pay for them and choose instead to pass a ballooning debt on to our children. Do you want to live in a country where those at the very top live lives of luxury?
Chrystia Freeland, you're describing what you're doing. What is happening here? Here's another situation where she's describing what she's doing. She says, women in other countries, our friends, our neighbors are losing the right to control their own bodies. We will not let that happen here in Canada. And Canada says, the Canadian BC government took away my job of 19 years for choosing my right to control my own body and the bodies of my 3 teenage daughters. You already let it happen in Canada. At what cost do these so-called rights come with? You're a disgrace, Chrystia Freeland. Nice shoes. Here's Speaker Freeland again.
Speaker, free contraceptives are central to a woman's right to control her own body. That is a fundamental woman's right. It is a fundamental human right.
Bravo.
Yeah, except that you took those rights away from Canadians.
As a woman, as a mother, and as Canada's Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, let me say clearly here today, this is an essential right our government will always protect.
Give me a break. I don't know if she says anything else, but I'm done listening. Here is Nita Anand and Sean Fraser, and they're smiling like idiots. They say post-budget 24 smiles. Cringe, right? Like, unbelievably, out of touch is the wrong word, right? They're signaling to somebody that we're able to continue the economic destruction of Canada. I read somewhere that the budget has already passed, that Jagmeet, that had already gone to vote and it had already passed. I don't know if that's true. I feel like they have to debate the budget and then they have the vote, and that usually doesn't happen within the first, like when it's introduced. Usually it gets introduced, there's a couple of days of debate, and see the debate and you talk about it, and then you wonder if the confidence vote is going to happen, and then you stop wondering because Jagmeet Singh hasn't got his retirement package yet. So Dan McTeague says, with so many, he's responding to the food professor. The food professor says, the narrative surrounding the Climate Change Institute becomes more intriguing daily. Among the multitude of studies on climate, On climate change, Budget 24 highlights those exclusively funded by Ottawa. Moreover, the 86-page damage control study resembles an extensive opinion piece. Andy Lee says taxpayer-funded Canadian Climate Institute charity that is running an empty office shares space and receives $30 million from the federal government despite allocating $0 to charity work, receives a cameo appearance in the budget. And it says the Canadian Climate Institute estimates that the health costs of climate change could be $87 billion per year by mid-century before reaching $246 billion annually by the end of the century. Over a period of 10 years, the Canadian Climate Institute projects that ozone exposure could be associated with over 270,000 hospitalizations and premature deaths. Reducing emissions to fight climate change is imperative to protecting the health and well-being of Canadians today and for generations ahead. So they're tying climate change with health, and they're saying, for your health, comrade, this is what we have to do. And all of this, the language like could be $87 billion and maybe reach $246 billion annually by the end of the century, and talking about how hold on, there was another one of those words, and I just want to highlight it. Oh, it's another could be. So the first could be was at the $87 billion, and the second could be was Climate Institute projects that ozone exposure could be associated with over 270,000 hospitalizations. You can't make policy on like maybe, like I might have 25 slices of pizza at lunch, right? Like, oh wow, we better order 9 large pizzas for Mark. Like that's not, you shouldn't do that. Like that's a bad idea. My eyes might be bigger than my belly, right? Like these people might be inflating these things for maybe their own means or their own reasons, right? That have nothing to do with reality. Dan McTeague's responding to all this. He says, with so many Canadians struggling to make ends meet and afford basics, it's galling to see the Trudeau government hand out $50 million to an indulgent Canadian Climate Institute whose only purpose is to feather the nest of the same Liberal government's costly climate policies, right? They're just selling the nonsense climate policies through using language like could be and could be, right? Liberal Party says Pierre Poilievre just said he'd be voting against the 3.87 million new homes, a national school food program, more $10 a day childcare spaces, and making the wealthiest pay their fair share. I think that a lot of people know that he'd be voting against that, all of the budget, right? Because like all of these statements are faulty. They're not actually true. A lot of these initiatives won't actually come to fruition. The Liberals know they don't have much runway left. 2025, 1 year is not enough time to even get their dental stuff off the ground, right? Like between now and next year, anything they pass will probably be undone by a Poilievre government. But again, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe he comes in and acts as the tax, but only acts as the tax for farmers, right? Can you imagine if he kept the tax for other things? Like, ooh. So I've heard rumors that that's actually the distinction. Like he's just going to act the tax for farmers. Like Bill 234, pass that properly, and then that's it. Like no other carbon tax reduction. Now, I don't think that that's actually accurate. I think that probably if he tries that, people will be upset, and so it would be funny. But I think that he's more intelligent than that and understands what's going on a little bit better. But we'll see. We'll certainly see, because it's not a foregone conclusion, that's for sure. But yeah, the $10 a day daycare is false. The national school food programs not in their purview. That's a provincial jurisdiction. So is the housing. And the 3.87 million homes, the only way you can do it is if you redefine what a home is. And that's exactly what Ontario is trying to do. So that's pretty funny. Here is Leslyn Lewis. She says, last year, the $35 billion Canada Infrastructure Bank spent 20 times more on salaries and bonuses than on actual infrastructure. They also gave out $8+ million in bonuses to its executives in 2022, and almost every year since it started, they have spent multiple times more on salaries and bonuses than on actual infrastructure. It's a Rive scam, right? It's just a Rive scam, but a different vehicle and different contractors slushing around lots of money for green stuff, right? Just like even with COVID and the ventilators, right? It's just the same kind of insiders, crony people getting insider contracts, sole source contract, all that kind of stuff. Unbelievable, right? Holly Doan says, Safety Canada Cabinet's 22 use of emergency powers against the Freedom Convoy protesters cost $73 million, expenses not yet final. $73 million? How did it cost that much? You know what would have ended it faster? Justin Trudeau going out and talking with them. Why didn't you just go talk to her? Jagmeet Singh says the conservative hand. I mean, it's absolutely unforgivable how Justin Trudeau treated the people who protested against his mandates. It's unbelievable. And it is a black stain on Canada's history. And Justin Trudeau deserves to be held accountable for the damage he's done to this country. I don't think we're going to be able to see all of that. I hope we do, but I don't think that that's going to actually happen. I don't think accountability is something that we're really good at, especially with politicians. They say, oh, we did our best. We were really trying to, bring about communism and, we failed, but we'll just carry on being rich and ignoring all the people who told us that communism isn't what people wanted. And they get away with it, right? And then their son comes back and tries to do it all again. And we learn nothing. Nothing. Jagmeet Singh, moving on just a little bit. The conservative handouts will continue, I guess, because Jagmeet will continue to support the budget. Justin Trudeau will keep Pierre Poilievre's $60 billion in taxpayer handouts to corporations. Thanks to Pierre and Justin, it's a good day for greedy Galen Weston and a bad day for you. Jagmeet Singh is hilarious because it feels like he's putting out things that he thinks might play well to a base that I don't think really exists. I don't think there are a lot of people who are really buying into Jagmeet Singh and the Galen Weston's the bad guy when it's obvious that the carbon tax is the thing driving the inflation. It's obvious that the thing driving the affordability crisis in homes is immigration. So these things, to me, are obvious, and it's not Galen Weston that's the bad guy here, but Jagmeet Singh trying to make him the bad guy makes Jagmeet look stupid. And every time he does it, he looks more stupid. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful